Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Harinam Sankirtana ki jai, Gaur Bhakti Vrinda. Very nice to have a cushion for my feet. Unfortunately, when I have a cushion for my feet, the book stand doesn't fit. The practicalities. Oh, I see, okay. You push this. So today we're reading from Sri Kripamoya Dasa. This is text, this is Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text 129. Beginning Kabu, 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 Nabadive, Tumara, Vishaya Taranga, Kabu Nabadive Tumar, Vishaya Taranga, Kabu Nabadive Tumar, Vishaya Taranga, Punarapi Etani Have Morasanga Punarapi Etani Pave Morasanga Punarapi Etani Pave Morasanga Kabuna Badive Tumara Vishayataranga Punarapi Etani Pave Morasanga Kabuna Badive Tumar Vishayataranga Punarapi Etani Pave Morasanga What's the number?
129.
129. Prabhupada, no? Prabhu, at any time. Na, not. Adive, will obstruct. Tomar, your. Vishaya Taranga, materialistic way of life. Punarapi, again. Etani, at this place. Pabe, you will get. More, my. Sangha, association. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further advised the Brahmin Kurma, if you follow this instruction, your materialistic life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow these regulated principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. Please repeat. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further advised the Brahmin Kurma, if you follow this instruction, your materialistic life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow these regulated principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. This is an opportunity for everyone. If one simply follows the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu under the guidance of his representative and chants the Hare Krishna mantra, teaching everyone as far as possible the same principle, the contamination of the materialistic way of life will not even touch him. It does not matter whether one lives in a holy place like Vrindavan, Navadvip or Jagannath Puri, or in the middle of European cities. Speaking to us. Where the materialistic way of life is very prominent. If a devotee follows the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he lives in the company of the Lord. Wherever he lives, he converts that place into Vrindavan and Navadvip. This means that materialism cannot touch him. This is the secret of success for one advancing in Krishna consciousness. Magana Tivarandasya Yanandana Shlokaya Chakshuraya. So when Prabhupada writes these purports, of course he's following the example of his predecessors, the Amrita Pravaha Vasya. He's writing, following on from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and the rest, or principally them. And but when he writes his purports, he's adding on specific instructions to us living in the heart of European cities. Although Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote for the British audience sometimes, and he said that people from those countries would come to my the banner of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and chanting Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Sachinandan. He didn't talk about Krishna consciousness being practiced in European cities, as far as I know. For Prabhupada it was a reality, for us it's a reality. How do you practice Krishna consciousness in the middle of a European city? How do you do it? Well, Prabhupada said we have created an embassy of the spiritual world. It's like when you go to the Indian embassy. It's a bit like India, isn't it? Have you ever been to the Indian embassy? Go to the Indian embassy in London. At least years ago it was like this. Now that India has outsourced the embassy business to another place. But the Indian embassy was always smelled like India. You would leave London and you'd open the door and you'd go in and it smelled a bit funky. It was a bit grimy. And everything was paper, no computers anywhere. Everyone was, looking through heaps and heaps of papers. There were stacks of papers and rubber stamps and rubber bands keeping sheets of paper together. And it would take ages to get your work done. Everybody talking in Hindi. And when you go to the Swiss embassy anywhere in the world, you leave the country that you're in and you go to Switzerland, just as Switzerland is efficient, organized, and run according to the rule of law, and India not so much. So when you step into the Swiss embassy, you get a little bit of Switzerland, the national culture. Each embassy displays the national culture. You feel as if you're in Switzerland when you go there. One time I had to go I was in the east of Africa and I wanted to go to the west of Africa. And I went to the Nigerian embassy. A little bit of Nigeria. So Prabhupada said in a similar way, he said, we have created the embassy of the spiritual world. The embassy of the spiritual world. When you step out of Bergerstrasse and you come into this temple, you leave Switzerland. Technically you leave Switzerland. Anything that happens here is in Vaikuntha, over and over. So this is the way that Prabhupada envisaged that he would spread Krishna consciousness by at least opening 108 temples and giving people an opportunity to come to see Krishna. And it is a fact. Yesterday there was a family that came here, probably a Tamil family, but they were quite content just to sit here and look at the deities. And I thought, aren't they bored? And the father was telling the son, bow down, and said, pay attention, just sit, be quiet, peaceful. And the wife was just, doing little things and taking a flower and offering it Prabhupada. They were happy. And it was at least half an hour they stayed here. So they enjoyed the atmosphere. We may think, I live here, and I know the atmosphere is not peaceful downstairs or upstairs, there's all sorts of things going on. When they come to the temple room, they feel that atmosphere. But here we have a situation where the Gurma Brahmin, he feels the atmosphere of Vaikuntha when he's with the Lord Chaitanya, and he already knows what his own home life is like. So he asks if he can go with the Lord. Please, I don't want to give up that Vaikuntha atmosphere. Please take me with you. And Lord Chaitanya says, no, you follow these regulated principles and you will never lose my association. What does he say? What's the first thing he says? Your life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. That's the first point. Don't worry. If you're a householder, that life will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. And if you follow these principles, we will again meet here. Well, that was an assurance, in one sense, that was never repeated. In other words, the Kurma Brahmin. We know, but the Kurma Brahmin at that time did not know. Lord Chaitanya never came back to Kurukshetra, as far as I know. He says, well, rather, you will never lose my association. And so we have to practice like this. We have to practice like this. Service and separation. when Prabhupada passed away, we lost the opportunity of ever seeing him again. And there was always a time when someone would say, Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada is coming. And you knew that everything was going to be okay. Or rather, you were going to be roasted, toasted, diced and spliced, or chopped up by the spiritual master's words. But at least you knew that you would be with your Guru, and his association was everything that you needed. When spiritual master passes away and returns to the spiritual world, we lose the physical association. So this is something that everybody has to learn how to practice, because usually the dynamic is that the Guru is older than the disciple. That's usually the dynamic, right? It's usually because the act of being a Guru is passing on everything that you've learned in life. So if you've lived a long time and you've practiced Krishna Bhakti for a long time, your duty then is to pass it on to others. So the dynamic is usually young disciple, old Guru. The Shastra says the best possible combination is young disciple, young Guru. Then they both have a lot of life ahead of them. Because forming a disciple, shaping a disciple takes some time. It's not just something that can be done at the tail end of your life. In other words, you can't... I once knew a man who always told me, he said, Kripamoya, I will take Krishna consciousness seriously when I'm a little bit older. Indian man. Every time I asked him, I said, why don't you just doing enough? Why don't you just take the next step? He said, when I'm older. So not like that. Not like that. Because when you're older, the Guru is also older. He has very little time left. You have less time left. So best thing is young disciple. And therefore this Upanayanam, or what we call second initiation, was given in between the ages of 8 and 13. Of course, the system also is that you take initiation according to your need. So it was not uncommon, for instance, in the life of Ramanujacharya, he had five gurus. The idea is that you get initiated every time you're studying a new scripture or learning a new method. You get initiated. Initiation simply means the beginning of something. So every time you perform a vrat of chanting a certain mantra is usually a month or 3 months or a year or something like that. So I'm now going to chant this mantra for 1 month. Well, in order to chant a mantra, you have to be given the mantra. So when you're given a mantra, that's initiation. So the Guru will give you the mantra, you'll chant it for a month. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. So that was the system. When we do what we do, we take 2 principles. It's a very great vrat, it's a Mahavrat, actually. It's known as Samashrayana, or complete shelter. But that's how we define initiation. So anyway, the idea is that we need to allot enough time in life to do everything that Krishna consciousness instructs, and enough time in the day. And usually the householders, they're so busy, and their busyness only increases as their life goes by. The most dangerous person in the whole of the Krishna consciousness is the young householder with no children. Very dangerous person to associate with. Why? They're blissfully unaware of what comes next. And neither are they subscribed to the regulations of the brahmacharya ashram. So they've gone beyond the brahmacharya ashram, but they're not quite grihastas in the sense of accepting the full responsibility. So you associate with them, and they say, yes, grihasta life is wonderful. Well, tell me in 5 years. So where there is production of children, there will be responsibility. Where there is purchasing of a house, there's responsibility. Where there's running a career, there's responsibility. And these responsibilities can weigh down on one so that we get the, you have to come away from the door. Some other people will be coming through the door. Where the responsibilities are there will be pressure. And where there's pressure, there's stress. And where there's stress, there will be anxiety. So this is all in the life of a householder. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, yes, all these things are materialistic in the sense that even though you're a Brahmin, you're worshipping karma, your life is materialistic because householder life is done in relationship to others in which one considers one's material identity like that. And so he's saying, but if you follow these regulated principles, he says, you will never forget me, you'll always have my company. Normally we think of, when we say the word, the expression, regulated principles, we're thinking of the 4 things that you don't do. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, well, actually, there's 64 regulated principles. These are the things that you do. Of course you don't want to do those things. You know, that's not. Just like this morning I was looking at the deities, and I was seeing how beautiful the fish design was. With the fish on the backdrop, and then Chaitanya and Nityananda have the chadas spread like the fins of the fish. I thought, well, that's clever. And then they have the design, the scales of the fish design here, and also a fish design here. And then all the bottom of the altar there, or the top of the altar, was the blue water. That's very clever. My compliments to the Pujari. But then I thought, oh, but fish, we don't eat fish. Aren't fish dirty? Aren't fish dirty? I was thinking in my head, aren't fish dirty? No, we don't eat fish. Well, of course we don't eat fish. But are fish dirty just because you don't eat them? What sort of logic is that? This is something that can never be portrayed because we don't eat it. So Krishna can never be depicted with a cow because you don't eat the cow. Think about it. So fish are beautiful, they're designed by Krishna. Beautiful design for swimming in the water. Very clever. So we have regulated principles, but a regulated principle is simply, principle comes from the word principium. Principium is Latin for the thing that you do first, the thing that you think of first. A friend of mine, Ramesh Kalidai, he was invited to come to take, I won't say prasadam, but he was invited to eat with the Queen. And when you eat with the Queen, sometimes it's a garden party and there's 1,500, 1,000 people there, and sometimes it's just the Queen and her husband and you. So he was invited for. Anyway, we have a Queen, so it's considered a great honour.
Yes.
Great honour to come and eat with the Queen. Yes, in Russia they have no queens. No queens. So he was, and they brought him the meal. And of course, somehow or another they'd forgotten that he was a vegetarian. And so they brought him fish. And then he said, well, he was just pushing it around on his plate. He thought, what do I do? The regulated principle here is that I will be given the great mercy of eating with, the royal family. But at the same time, my other regulated principle is that I can't eat this. So he was just pushing it around, making it look as if something was happening on the plate. So then the prince said to him, but what is the matter, Ramesh? You can't eat something. He said, I'm a vegetarian. He said, why didn't you say? And the prince just went, this is what it means to be king. Bring something else. Anyway, then they brought him a plate full of salad with eggs. And then eventually, anyway, they sent another message to the kitchen. And at the end of the meal, the queen doesn't speak when she's eating, you know. So she left, and the prince left. And the head of the kitchen came. He said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I take full responsibility. Is there anything we can do to make it up to you? So he said, well, yes, you can come to Bhaktivedanta Manor, and perhaps the staff would like to come to see us, and we will serve you. So on that day, 17 people came from the Buckingham Palace to Bhaktivedanta Manor, from one buck to another buck. But there's no bhakti at Buckingham. Anyway, so he came and they were served. I showed them around. We served a nice meal, and we had a really good laugh. And then I gave a short talk, and they said, actually, from everything that we've seen, we understand that the principle here at Bhaktivedanta Manor is the very same principle as at Buckingham Palace. And I said, how so? He said, because we wake up in the morning, and the very first thing we think of, and when we go to bed at night, the last thing we think of is the royal family, the Queen. That's what we think of. Our life as servants of the Queen is just service. That's all we do. And your life when you wake up in the morning is you think of Radha Krishna. They are your king and queen. You said yes, that's true. So when a devotee wakes up in the morning, the first thing he or she thinks of is, or should be, service. Our body is not our own. Our life is not our own, in the sense that it's been given to Krishna. So the devotee always thinks, what does Krishna want me to do in these circumstances? And then he follows the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna. So if we do that, then our own home becomes an embassy of the spiritual world. Not only that, but if you're on traveling Sankirtan, your van becomes a temple. Have you ever noticed that? You've done that? So we had a van, a vehicle, our truck, and the dashboard. How do they say in German? Dashboard.
Armaturenbrett.
Huh?
Armaturenbrett.
Yeah, that. Where everything is placed, you know, where your focus. So there would be Radha and Krishna and Panchatattva, and sometimes in the morning we put lots of flowers and pictures of Srila Prabhupada, and Guru Puja would be, everything would be in the vehicle. So that is the way a devotee carries the environment of the spiritual world with him. Sometimes we would be selling books and we would become arrested by the police, especially in the 1970s. And then they would take everything away. Because of course you could injure yourself. The police they're only interested in one thing, that you don't die while you're in a cell, and that we can preserve your life long enough to charge you with a crime. You are being arrested for the crime of distributing books. And so they would take anything by which you could hang yourself. So your neck beads off, Brahmin thread off, kopin off, shoelaces off, everything, anything. Dhoti they let us keep somehow. Actually, we weren't wearing dhotis, we were trousers. Anyway, the point here is that in such a confined circumstance, you also have to take Vaikuntha with you. So I remember one night I was in jail for, 3 days. 3 days. I was arrested on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday morning, and then to the court. So for 3 days, without japa beads, neck beads, Brahmin thread, underwear, everything. So I did the full morning program for 3 days. I gave class to myself, sang Govindam prayers, recited shlokas, because you have to do something all day, you see. Otherwise the conception will be, I am in jail, I'm unhappy, I'm restricted, I have nothing, everything has been taken away from me. But if you don't want to feel like that, if you want to feel freedom, then you have to remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as soon as you remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's there in that jail with you. And a most incredible feeling came over me. Most incredible feeling. Which is that, yes, Krishna is here. Krishna is here. And how wonderful that is. So that's possible. But we have a decision to make. The difficulty is we have a decision to make. In life it's easy to remember Krishna. It's also very, very easy to forget Krishna. So we just have to make a decision. Which do I want? Now, for the morning program, that's easy. You remember Krishna, the morning program, because there's 20 other people singing and dancing. So that sort of kirtan is easy. But can you do kirtan if it's just you? Can you do japa if it's just you? Can you do philosophy if it's just you? Then you have to think very carefully. Because sometimes you might be in a situation, we're not always in community. So Kurma, the Brahmin, he feels a little bit isolated. And the greatest hope of his life is wonderful sannyasi who has come. Like we were discussing yesterday, the actual village of Lula, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went and told the residents, this is not in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is something that happened to me. We met the residents of Lula, and they said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had told them 500 years ago to do this kirtan before breakfast. You see? So the message was the same everywhere he went. And they're still doing it today. For as long as I know. As far as I know, they're still doing it today. So, for the morning, that's all right. They do kirtan before breakfast. Or as we were talking in Assam, they do kirtan at the end of the day. Well, what about during the day? There's a story of Narada Muni and the saint and the farmer. You know that story? And the saint and the farmer. The saint was asking Narada Muni, why does the Lord give all benefit to someone who chants his name? And Narada Muni was saying, because it was hard. And the Brahmin said, no, it's not hard, I chant mantras also. And the Brahmin was given a pot of water that was filled up to the top, and the farmer was given a pot of water that was filled up to the top. And Narada Muni said, I want you to walk around this field, around the Maryada of this field. They walked around, and the Brahmin was walking. First of all, the Brahmin went, he was like this, he was balancing everything, so that the water didn't spill. Narada Muni said, if you spill a drop, you'll lose. So then the farmer was going, he was Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya. And then he came back. And Narada Muni said to the Brahmin, he is actually superior to you because in the middle of his duties, his responsibilities, he was chanting. You were worried about spilling water. He was worried about spilling water, but he was chanting and you were not. So this is the test. If in the middle of your daily life, you can remember the Lord by bringing him to your mind. And devotees have a way of bringing Krishna into their mind. Whether it's a Krishna keychain, even a Krishna keychain, Krishna t-shirt, Krishna, what else? Krishna games, Krishna's puzzles, Krishna's pictures. So you go into a devotee's home, there'll be everything there. Anything. You think that devotees are very fearful of forgetting Krishna, and you'd be right. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives his assurance to the Brahmin, if you follow the teachings that I've told you, you won't forget me at any moment, and we'll always be in each other's company. Any questions? Any discussion? Okay, we'll move on. At whosoever house Sri Chaitanya accepted his alms by taking prasadam, he would convert the dwellers to his Sankirtan movement and advise them just as he advised the Brahmin named Kurma. When I lived in Africa, we would go preaching, and we had a magazine called, we had two magazines in the local language. One was called Rudi Kwa Mungu, and one was called Ufahamu wa Krishna. And they both meant back to Godhead. So we'd tell everybody wherever we went in the African villages, Imbaya, Jina, Krishna, Mwanyezi Mungu. Chant the holy names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. You have to preach in every language. So we went to one house, and it was a mud hut. It was a village of mud huts. It was in the middle of Africa, nowhere. You say middle of nowhere. And the house was made of mud, and the roof was made of straw. And we thought, yes, we must be the first people here. And so we came in, and immediately the villagers said, oh, take him to the chief. So we were taken to the chief of the village, and the chief said, come in. And we had to, he said, kill a chicken, the great guests have come. I said, no. He said, we don't eat chicken. No, you're a special guest. Don't worry, it's nothing. We can kill a chicken for you. I said, no, don't do that. So then we sat down. There on his wall, in the middle of this house, African village, no other pictures on the wall, was a picture of Panchatattva. This man had taken the picture off the back of the Rudi Kwa Mungu magazine, and he pinned it to his wall. And I said to him, appointed, he said, oh yes. Well, he didn't say it like that, but he wasn't, because he wasn't Tamil. But he said, there was a translator with me, he said, I'm liking this very much. And on that particular image, it's the old image of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that's in a British museum. And it's got devotees of different, should we say, skin tones. So there was a couple of very dark-skinned people in the Harinam party. So they thought that would be very good for Africa. And so they put that on the back. And he liked it very much. Because they like the drums and they like the singing. Definitely like the dancing. So how to spread Krishna consciousness in different places? We have to be adaptable, and we teach Krishna consciousness wherever we go. But as Narada Muni did, as my wife was saying in her class, he speaks to different people according to their status in life. Narada Muni is the best preacher. And as the best preacher, he always asks people, how are you doing? That's Narada Muni's question. To the king, Narada Muni says, are your subjects faithful? Is your treasury full? Are your enemies subdued? To the Brahmins he says, how are you? How is your learning? How are you doing in your struggle over the cycle of birth and death? Are you faring well? To the Vaishya he says, how's business? Are your employees happy? And to the Sudras he says, is your master treating you well? And to the hunter, who's beyond the caste system, he says, why are you half killing animals? So to King Prachinabhari he says one thing, to Mrigarhi says another. And he can give consolation and sympathy as well. When Chitraketu's son died, Narada Muni was able to comfort him. And through the agency of Narada Muni, the son came back to life. And the son, who was the object of affection of the king and his wife, was able to speak to the king and console him. But that's the thing. Narada Muni was so clever that he managed to get the son awake and brought back to life for as long as it took for him to say something convincing. Now when he speaks to Kamsa, he's speaking something else. He's saying, you know, anybody could be Krishna. You better kill a lot of them. This is very strange. So why is Narada Muni advising the killing of children? Okay. Because it brings Krishna that much closer, that much quicker. So Narada Muni is expert, and we should also be expert. When people hear that you're interested in what they've got to say, they will be interested, at least a little bit, in what you've got to say. Prabhupada was at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and he was speaking to a chap called Graham Hill. He was a racing driver, very fast cars. And Prabhupada said, so, you're a racing driver, what is it like driving at such speed? And he was just talking and talking and talking. And if you look at the conversation books, if you look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's just Prabhupada speaking. Or it's rather Prabhupada speaking on behalf as a representative of the great devotees like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sridhar Swami, Baladeva Jibhushana, and his Guru Maharaj, all funneled into his purports. But it's just the Acharyas speaking. When you look at Srila Prabhupada's lectures, same thing, except at the end we get some devotee question. When you look at the morning walk, it's Prabhupada speaking kind of with his devotees. Prabhupada will say something like, so, what do they say? Big scientists, what do they say? Then the devotee will start speaking. Prabhupada's listening. Then he'll say something, I kick on the face with boot or something. But in the conversation books, when you read the conversation books, there's so much rubbish. So much rubbish. Conversation books, you look at them and you think, why does Prabhupada let these people speak for such a long time? They're talking about racing cars, or they're talking about this and that and the other, the weather, cooking, anything. But then, after listening, Prabhupada spots a point where he can come in and he can say something, and then they listen. And they're very sympathetic. Why? Because he has listened to them. So the first rule of preaching is shut up and listen. This is what Narada Muni has taught us. Ask questions. And it's good to ask questions because when a person opens their mouth, what comes out will be the state of their consciousness. What comes out of their mouth will be what's on their mind. The Mahabharata says, a man can only speak what is on his mind. Or a man's heart is revealed through his voice. So what people speak about, that's what's on their mind. So your consciousness is transformed into words. Now, when you want to develop your consciousness, you do it the other way. I'm not Krishna conscious, but I would like to be Krishna conscious. So you use your voice in order to create that consciousness. So that's what we do. We talk about Krishna, we sing about Krishna. His qualities, his leelas. And you think, well, I'm not really interested in that. Well, try it. When you try it. For instance, every Sunday, when I was young, every Sunday we used to put on a play. And it was a play, usually from the Krishna book, or we didn't have the Chaitanya Charitamrita then, but we had the 3 cantos, two and a half cantos of the Bhagavatam we had. And so we put on different plays. A little while later, when we got more Bhagavatam stories, we could put on extra plays. And the plays would involve a box of usually saris or cloth, a couple of hats, a couple of swords, sticks. And with that, you'd have to put on a whole play. But we would have to learn the lines from the story and learn how to speak the different characters' parts. But we'd have to do it in 2 hours, because we'd have to do it from the end of the morning program to the beginning of the Sunday feast. So Sankirtan devotees, we had to learn a play, a whole play, including the fight scenes. And as brahmacharis, we'd always have a fight scene. That was the fun part. And then we would we put the play on to entertain the other devotees and the guests, and it was great. No lights, no special effects, no smoke machines, no elaborate script. We'd have to remember it as we were going. And these were it brought the pastime to life. I always remember we did a play of, Dakshas cursing of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva's ruining the fire sacrifice of Daksha, and Sati's death, and Lord Shiva's revenge in the form of Virabhadra. That was fantastic. It was a great punch-up. So there in the big prasadam hall at the manor. But what we'd done was devotees were hiding in different places. So we had a big chimney. They were hiding behind the chimney. One devotee was hiding outside the house. Two devotees were hiding outside the house. So Lord Shiva went to his hair like this and began to laugh very loudly, plucked a hair from his head, threw it to the floor, and suddenly Virabhadra came out of the fireplace because Lord Shiva had thrown Virabhadra. No one knew that Virabhadra was there. And we had a very big devotee. Not big as in status, but big as in physical appearance. And he was terrifying. And immediately the children in the audience, who were children of the Sunday feast guests, they all started screaming, which added to the play. They all became characters in the play, began running here and there. And then a demon came in through the window very slowly, like this, opening window. Someone had found some green paint and he came through it. And just when we thought all the demons had come, there was another one came in through the door. It was great. But just as I'm telling you now in 2024, and this was in 1976 or something, so I'm remembering that pastime vividly. Why? Because I was in it. It wasn't just reading in the pages of the book. I was one of the demons. My friend was Lord Shiva. Somebody else was Daksha. And so when you do that, you bring the pastime to life. These pastimes are in the Bhagavatam for us to portray in drama and song and actions and speeches and our thought, so that our thoughts are moulded, so that every branch of human endeavour can be replicated in a way that is mindful of Krishna. Just like in Mathura, every time it's Krishna's birthday, Janmashtami, they have this thing called, what's it called? Darihandi, where they make a pyramid, usually of young men. You've seen it? And there's a pot of yogurt at the top. And they're dressed like cowherd boys. And so there's a big 20 men stand in a circle, then 15 men, and then 8 men, and then 6 men, 4 men, 3, 2, 1, and then finally the boy at the top, he breaks the pot of yogurt. And it's very dangerous, it's very sporting. So in this way, they remember the pastime of Krishna every year. I told you the story of the village where they put on the play of Ram and Lakshman. The whole play, no script. They just walk towards each other. People are becoming ecstatic. So, in Italy, devotees used to go to the village saints festivals all over Italy. I don't know whether they do this in Switzerland also, but there's a village, the founding saint or the saint associated with the church in that village has a special day. There's a big fiesta, big festival, and a big parade and games and a fair. And Samaka Swami would be putting on a big festival for people, serving thousands of plates of prasadam, putting on kirtan as part of the festival. In England, Parashuram just celebrated the St. Patrick's Day. He does this every year. St. Patrick is the festival, is the saint of Ireland, where Parashuram is from. So over the years, over the past 30 years, he's distributed millions of plates of prasadam. That's his thing. He'll go to protest marches. He even went to a Muslim protest march. You know, everybody was going Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, and he was distributing khichdi. Anyway, he went to St. Patrick's Day festival, and all the devotees were dressed in green. So green dhotis, green saris, green hats, but they were chanting Maha Mantra. Jai Shri Ram. Well, everybody loved it. So there's so many ways. So a householder, particularly, who has a temple in his home, has to be particularly inventive, especially with children. You have to be inventive because he has a responsibility for the whole family to think how I can bring my children's consciousness to Krishna in a way that will be very productive for them. We okay? Carrying on. This is a sublime mission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Go with me, there's juice in this purple yet. Many people come and inquire whether they have to give up family life to join the society, but that is not our mission. No, I didn't choose this purple. Narayani, did you choose this purple? They're going to think, all the brahmacharis are going to think this is set up. It's a set-up job. He's going to talk about the wonders of family life. I'm not talking, Prabhupada is talking. You listened to him yesterday, you listened to him today. This is not our mission. One can remain comfortably in his residence. That's provided you have an education and you've been able to buy a residence. Well, if you don't have any money, you can't be a householder. I'm just saying, okay? You can't hold anything. One can remain comfortably. We simply request everyone to chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Very enthusiastic this morning, isn't it? If one is a little literate and can read Bhagavad Gita as it is, and Srimad Bhagavatam, that is so much better. These works are now available in an English translation and done very authoritatively to appeal to all classes of men. Can we thank, just within our minds, the devotees whose names should be affixed in this temple, I think, who spent so much time translating Prabhupada's books into German. It's something we don't think about, isn't it? I don't think about translations as much. I was involved in translating Prabhupada's books into Swahili. And I am very sympathetic to any devotee who has to translate anything that Prabhupada wrote into a language in which the philosophical concepts which Prabhupada explains do not exist. In Swahili, if you want to say bird, you say ndege. If you want to say airplane, you say ndege. If you want to say airmail letter, you say kwa ndege. So now you have to translate reincarnation of the soul into that language. You have to work hard. So sometimes Prabhupada says something like this, and you have to say something like this, just in order to explain what he's saying, because you know that if the person reads it, they're not going to understand reincarnation of the soul, because there's no such concept. Just like in North Korea, there's no word for God. The word, you look in a North Korean dictionary, the word God will not be there, because the concept has been outlawed in North Korea. So sometimes people bang the drum about, well, Srila Prabhupada's original books. Well, if you were part of translating Prabhupada's books into all these different languages, you would have understood that sometimes things have to be rendered differently in order to just make sense. And we do want Prabhupada's books to make sense. So anyway, thank you, whoever it was, to translated these books into German. And that translation work has not stopped. There's 186 major languages in the world. I think now we're up to 90 languages of the BBT. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Now, Let me tell you, in 1962, Srila Prabhupada was invited to go to Japan. Prabhupada was invited to go to Japan. And that's when he translated Light of the Bhagavat. He wrote that book, Light of the Bhagavat. And he envisaged an exhibition in Tokyo that would have pictures from the Light of the Bhagavat, because he knew the Japanese people were very interested in nature. Or as you say here in Germany, the nature. Everybody asks me, have you been walking in the nature? It's okay, it's just the way the language works. But if Prabhupada had translated some things into Japanese, and Prabhupada had actually started preaching in Japan instead of New York, what would that have looked like? You know, devotees would be translating Prabhupada's books out of Japanese into German. Okay, that would have been something. The whole GBC would have been Japanese. All the Germans and the Swiss would be complaining, why is the GBC all Japanese? Why does it have to be Japanese? I mean, you know, isn't it, Krishna Prabhupada? There would be a lot of historical differences, but the way it happened was the way it happened. So we're translating from English into all these different languages. Why? So that people can understand. And Prabhupada, acting as representative of Narada Muni, he thinks, what do the Japanese people want to hear? What do they like? And let me make it more palatable for them. So there are regional variations, you know. Just like where I was preaching, I think the other day for breakfast we had avocados in the fruit salad. Was it avocados in the fruit salad? Delicious. But in Africa they're called dog food. Avocado is called dog food because the taste is so subtle they can't taste it. They have a tendency to like the gross tastes. So what happens is that the avocado tree, and the avocados, let me tell you, it's like heavenly planets. The avocados are like this. You ever seen an avocado like that? It tastes like an avocado, really heavy. And you can buy them for, you know, a few cents, because nobody eats them. In fact, so many avocados grow there, but they drop off the tree onto the ground, and only the dogs come along and eat them. That's why the locals call it dog food. Now we tried distributing things like halva always goes down well, which they call tum tum. Halva is called tum tum. But you try distributing something else with, you know, Indian spices, you know, nice sabji or something like that. Not interested. But a cornmeal mash and boiled spinach is taken as a great, you know, yes, this is proper food. So whoever you're dealing with, the language, the mode of presentation, the local aptitudes for learning, it all has to be dealt with. And it may be, as you know, today we'll have two classes, two Sunday feast classes, one to the locals and one to the Tamils, because what needs to be presented to both audiences is different. They do the same in Hong Kong. To a certain extent, we do the same in England, because what they want to listen to, how they're inspired to take up Krishna consciousness, the examples used, is all different. So as a preacher, you have to be quite intelligent. You have to know your audience first. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his great Acharya followers are doing that for us. They've done that for us. And there's a difference even between preaching Krishna consciousness in America and preaching Krishna consciousness in Switzerland. Things that the devotees say in America, you can't get away with here. Things that you say here to Swiss people, you won't get away with in America. It might string you up. Things you can get away with in the northern states of the USA, you can't say in the southern states like Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. Yeah, you have to preach in a different way, isn't it? My wife was in, where was it you were? New Orleans. Yeah, it's just, the police are, a different species of human life. one of the 400,000 species. Our devotees in one place, they were distributing books in a car park, and when the police came, they ran away. The police were shooting at them. You have to be careful what you do. In Italy, just a few, 100 kilometers that way, devotees were down in the southern part near Sicily, and they were doing really well on book distribution. Lots of books were going out. And the local mafia got to hear that somebody is in your territory selling things and making a lot of cash on the street. And they came along in a car and they machine gunned the truck. One devotee was in there sleeping. It was okay, but I'm just saying, local knowledge, local expertise, and local preferences, and local language is very important. And local food. Awesome. So Narada Muni and Srila Prabhupada and all of that have done this for us. There's a lot of things in the culture of Krishna consciousness that happen in India now that we would probably not get. It's interesting. Now that Krishna consciousness is spread in India, try and understand, it stopped being American Krishna consciousness and it's become Indian Krishna consciousness. And some of Krishna consciousness movement in India is very, very Indian. Indians tend to be much more deferential than certainly the English. The English are not very deferential. And such ceremonies as, pouring water on the feet to greet someone is deferential, is good for India. But in some cases, it looks very strange to Western eyes. So be careful of that. Anyway, Prabhupada continues, and I'm going to continue. It's one of the best purports actually in the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita for the preacher. Instead of living engrossed in material activities, people throughout the world should take advantage of this movement and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra at home with their families. One should also refrain from sinful activities, illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. Out of these 4 items, illicit sex is very sinful. Every person must get married. So, any questions? Who's Prabhupada speaking to here? He's not speaking to the devotees. He's saying that in society, as a general rule in human society, if you want to reshape human society, people have to be married. Because people are being left emotionally damaged by the way that, now you can find a sexual partner just by swiping right on your phone. And in a few seconds, you can be hooked up with someone. You don't even have to go through the courtesies as they used to in Switzerland, buying a bunch of flowers, a box of chocolates, sweet words, a trip to the theatre, a stroll along the promenade. That's the first date. Second date, something else. Third date, something else. And then maybe some physical. But now it's all computerized, all digitized. So the tendency to be able to exploit material nature has been enhanced, doubled, tripled, quadrupled. Therefore, people's senses are not controlled at all. Anything, any of the 4 regulator principles that we follow, those are being pursued to the utmost degree. But the results can be seen everywhere. You know how many people died last year from opiate addiction in America? Just by taking a prescription drug. Over 100,000 people, usually young people. 100,000 young people. Now, if 100,000 people had died in in a bomb that went off in New York, America would have started a war with whoever. 3,500 people, it was a great tragedy, but 3,500 people died on 9/11. And America started a long, long war with Afghanistan and all countries in the region, Iraq. 100,000 people die. You know, you'd think the entire military-industrial complex would be, you know, raging against the perpetrator. But 100,000 young, usually men, 100,000 young men, the fruit, thousands and thousands of families in America, the pride of their parents, completely wiped out by a prescription drug that you can buy over the counter. And no one's questioning them. And food, denatured, inhuman, chemically modified food. And you see it, you get out of the airport, any big city in America, and you think you've landed on an alien planet. Just like when you go to Italy. Well, for me as an English person, when I go to Italy, then everybody looks very nicely dressed. You know, you go around Milan and they think, well, this person is really dressed. They've got, you know, sharp clothes and suits, and women are very refined. You go out at an airport in America, you walk around the street, people are overweight. But so many people are overweight that it's not even noticed anymore. You go to the supermarket and you regularly find, you know, t-shirts and bottoms that are, you know, not only double X, but triple X, and 4 extra large, and 5 extra large. And it's huge. And people are not questioning it because everybody has started to look obese. Not only that, but the language has become denatured. You know, English is slipping away as the first language of America, to be replaced by grunts. Right? What's up? Yo, people. The language is slipping away, so they're losing the physical form of the language, the innocence, the youth. And this is how civilizations die. Civilizations usually follow a bell curve. You know, bell curve goes up, stays for some time, peaks, and then dies away. Whole civilizations have come and gone. Where are the Egyptians that built the pyramids? They're gone. Phoenicians, the Etruscans, ancient Greeks, Romans, you know, they're all gone. Kingdoms come and go. The map of Europe 200 years ago looked completely different, didn't it? So old things, they slip away. Usually because the society starts decaying from within. And a society starts decaying from within, usually due to unrestricted sense gratification. Unrestricted sense gratification makes men and women very weak. And so with that weakness, they cannot fight any enemy. So in the same way, these basic principles is what we call our basic regulated principles. It's not just for us, but it's for all of society. We think that it's just for us because it's what we say when we get initiated, but that actually it's the basis of human civilization. So when we take our initiation vows, what you're actually promising the Guru is, I will be a human. I will be a controlled human being. Which is not a great thing to ask, is it? So the Guru says, so, what are the regulated principles? I promise to be a civilized human being, Guru Maharaj. Very good. Your name is? And what else? How many rounds? 16. 16 rounds is actually the regulated principle. The others are just, being an ordinary human being. Illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. Talking to our dear friend Raghunath, who's started his Wisdom of the Sages in America. And after he went on the Joe Rogan podcast, his viewership just exploded. But the one thing that they noticed, the two things that they noticed, one is that the age of people who are interested in Krishna consciousness has gone up. Whereas Prabhupada was mainly preaching to young boys and girls of sort of 17 to 25. When I became a devotee, there were some really old people in the temple. They were at least 24. They really lived life. You know, they've really been around. They'd really experienced all that life had, you know, they were 24. I thought, wow, it's nice being with older people. But now we find, at least Raghunath finds, that people listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam every day on the podcast, the average age, he told me at least, is over 40. Why? Because they've really gone through life. And the second factor is that in many cases, they've been smashed by the material energy, you know, which, if you're not careful, material energy will do to you very nicely. It's called the laws of material nature. You'll be smashed. If you try to exploit material nature, you will be smashed. Yeah. This is the difficulty. It looks nice, but if you try to exploit it, you will be smashed. So therefore, the Guru says, don't try to exploit it. Or, if you're exploiting material nature, just according to what you need, and no more. And in a refined and a regulated way, no more. Otherwise you become entangled. As Prabhupada used that word, entangled. So now we're seeing that many people, because intrinsically they've not, these four regulated principles are not just something that ISKCON has made up. The basis of, you know, progressive human society of any age. You know, within, I won't say living memory, but 200 years ago at least, if you wanted to get a PhD, you had to be a brahmachari. At least in Oxford University, you had to be a brahmachari to go for a PhD. Okay? You could not be an uncivilized man. And of course, no women would get PhDs. Sorry, but they had other things. So you had to be celibate, you had to be refined, you had to be a believer in God. Everybody went to church. That's why when we see churches like this one, which is very noisy, it's lovely to hear the bells, but I'm wondering how many people are going. All these churches are built at the peak of Christianity. They're built at the peak of Christianity, either 1700s or 1800s, when many people used to go to church. Therefore, they're built for 300, 400 people. Why? Why are they built for 300, 400 people? Because 300, 400 people used to go there every Sunday. In Ireland, it's still like that. You drive across Ireland on a Sunday morning, as I have, and it's like a ghost town. Everything's a ghost town. You wonder where is everybody? And then when the churches are emptying, you see that every single person in the town, especially if you drive further west, you know, everybody's in church. Everybody's in church. So it's still something there. But it's dropping because of the priests and the disappointment with their leadership. In Ireland, there was two governments. One was the government that was voted in by the population, and the other was the church. But now it is quite possible that people insult priests or they spit at them in the street in Dublin, capital city, because of they've lost their reputation. So the churches were built for 300 or 400 people. Now you're lucky to find 30 or 40. Except on special occasions like Christmas and Easter. In Davos. We saw many beautiful small churches, you know, every village has a church. And Keshavacharya was telling us that when he was 8 or 9 years old, everybody in the village used to go to the church. So now, the church only opens for a service once a month, because the priest has to go to 4 other different churches, because he's a priest for this one, this one, this one. See, so people are losing that. So, the message of Krishna consciousness is not only chant Hare Krishna, but it's chant Hare Krishna and please lead a civilized life. So Prabhupada is describing the features of a civilized life. And if human society follows that, you don't decay. The spiritual strength remains. Your young men do not become weak. Your women do not become weak. But the strength is maintained in society. And interestingly enough, you go to societies that are strong, like the Japanese are quite strong, and different parts of the world are quite strong. They've kept their intrinsic culture. And the culture is there of preserving sattva guna. Unless you preserve sattva guna, the mode of goodness, in a society, collectively amongst the people. Did you know in Japan, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, there was no cow killing? Only 120, 130 years ago, they began this, if even that. But for many, many, many years, cows were protected. Very interesting. But in Japanese culture, people bow down. You can tell a culture, whether it's sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, by how they greet each other. So, where there is respect offered, where there's deference offered, that is sattva guna. In other words, you bow down, or you namaste, or you nod your head. Japanese like to, really bow down. And then in a culture which is in the mode of passion, everybody's treated as an equal. It's a handshake or a high five. And then it slips down even more. So. So, to stop a culture slipping, sattva guna must be preserved. So how do you preserve sattva guna? Every society has a way of doing it, but it will more or less follow these 4 regulated principles. So everyone should be married. Every woman, especially, must get married. If the women outnumber the men, some men can accept more than one wife. Hooray! See? It's in the books. Sorry, it doesn't say that women can accept more than one husband. It's not here. I'm following Prabhupada. And as Prabhupada said to the man who said, you said we could marry more than one wife. He said, is this what you want to choose from my books? In that way, there will be no prostitution in society. If men can marry more than one wife, illicit sex will be stopped. One can also produce many nice preparations to offer Krishna: grain, fruit, flowers, and milk. Why should one indulge in unnecessary meat eating and maintain horrible slaughterhouses? What is the use of smoking and drinking tea and coffee? People are already intoxicated by material enjoyment. If they indulge in further intoxication, what chance is there for self-realization? Similarly, one should not partake in gambling and unnecessarily agitate the mind. I came from a small country village, and at that time there was something called the temperance movement, where the whole church that I went to, everybody did not take alcohol. They'd be offered a drink and they would say, sorry, I'm temperance. And you would know what that meant. Some people would wear badges, and the badges, they would take a pride. Sometimes there was marches, Harinams down the street with signs saying, the temperance movement. What a childhood I had. So as a result, in our house there was no alcohol. So I had a rebellious few weeks, and then I met the devotees. But at that point in my life has not featured alcohol. And so now we have one devotee he was a jockey, and his life was ruined by alcohol. Jockey, horse racing, Middle East and different places. So he said his life was ruined by alcohol, and he gave it up and became a devotee. So the point is, people who have been there and know how ruinous alcohol and drugs and all these different things. Similarly, gambling. People can be ruined by gambling. Because we always think, yes, illicit sex, I understand. Intoxication, I understand. Maybe tea I can't quite understand, but the rest of them I can understand. What's the other one? Vegetarianism. Most people can understand vegetarianism now, can't they? They look down on us now. The vegans look down on us. They say, oh, God, you're only vegetarian. So, but the others, gambling. What's wrong with gambling? What's wrong with gambling? It's like one of the regulated principles that you have to really spell out. And the only way you can spell out gambling is by talking to a gambler. Someone whose life has practically been ruined by gambling. It starts off small. It starts off one coin and a machine. Or it starts off just a little bet on your phone. But lives completely ruined. It's not only the gambler whose life is ruined, but it's the partner, the children, the whole future is ruined by it. So the things that we're saying here about regulated principles is a message for everyone, because your life will be ruined by these things, generally speaking. So don't do it. Don't do it. Then, what else? We're just getting to the end now. The real purpose of human life is to attain the spiritual platform and return to Godhead. That is the summum bonum of spiritual realization. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to elevate human society to the perfection of life by pursuing the method described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his advice to the Brahmin Kurma. See, this is the difference between what Prabhupada wanted and what ISKCON is teaching in some parts of the world. There's a little difference. One is that Prabhupada created ISKCON for society, but sometimes ISKCON is created for the benefit of its members, and so it becomes more of a religious club. You understand the difference? In other words, that we're interested in preaching to people so that they can become members of our group. But Prabhupada created ISKCON to preach to every single person in the country. That means that each temple should be organized in such a way that the preaching is going on. That means that success of a temple is measured by how many ordinary people are taking up at least something. And therefore, at different times and different places, we have measured the success of ISKCON by not how many people are becoming initiated, but by how many people, due to ISKCON's influence, have at least become vegetarian, for instance. One devotee went to some sort of conference at London University and was talking about, she was talking about how there are more vegetarians in society now. And the professor said, well, that's due to you. You've done that. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, for the last 30, 40 years, you've been distributing books like Higher Taste or Adi Raj's cookbook, or you've been promoting vegetarianism. So this great shift in British society towards a vegetarian diet is largely been coming from you. Do you not realize the effect that ISKCON has had on the country? And the devotee was thinking, oh, thank you. That's very nice. And so, where we are vocal and where we are persuasive, people really do appreciate us. It's very interesting in Poland. There were two main spiritual groups. One was ISKCON, and one was, what's this called? The Sri Sri Ravi Shankar group. Art of Living. And the government of Poland asked both organizations, do you have a program for young people to stop young people getting into drugs, or to help them to get off drugs? And ISKCON said, no, we don't have a specific program. We have a festival program, we have Harinam, we have books about Krishna consciousness, but we haven't developed a specific program for helping the young people of Poland get off drugs. The other group said, yes, we have a specific program for young people. So the government said, okay, we will give you funding. Just like the government of Britain are very interested in education of young people. Because if you educate a young person in sattvic living and discipline and study they'll become a good citizen. So the government is very interested in schools in Britain. So that is why when devotees put forward the idea of having a school that was Krishna conscious, the government said, okay, let's do it. And the government of the country gave 12 million pounds for the devotees to build a school. That was the first school. And now we are on 12th school number 12. And in total the government pays the salaries, and in total the government to date has given 200 million pounds of taxpayers' money to build Hare Krishna schools. Hare Krishna. Are they interested in the Hare Krishna religion? No. Are they interested in citizens? Good citizens? Yes. This is a program for reformation of society. So ISKCON, when it's a program for reformation of society, people pay attention. What have you got to offer to society? Well, we put tilak on our heads and we sing and we dance. No. That's what you do for your personal religion. What are you doing for society? What are you doing for Switzerland? We have to be able to answer. We can't just say, well, something. Broad sweeping social change. So now what's happened is that with the formula for teaching how to be a good citizen and a spiritual person, and meditation and yoga, this package that is being taught in the schools has gone out to 3 more schools that are not Krishna schools, but they're just ordinary schools, where the principles are taken and taught in the schools for ordinary children. So it's not a Hare Krishna school, these are ordinary schools, with none of the parents are devotees, none of the children are devotees, but it's still got these teachings of the regulated principles. So now what's happening is that other schools are coming to this and say, can we also have this package? Because the children, 1 in 5 teachers in Britain has been attacked by people. A 5th of all teachers have been attacked. And many have been insulted by children. There is no discipline whatsoever. Because of course we stopped all forms of discipline, because of course that was frowned upon. So there's no, Any of you ever get the stick when you were younger? Did they stop doing that in Switzerland? No? You ever naughty children? You ever got the stick? No. They banned that. So there's even less discipline. So now children are bringing their phones into school, and they're looking at the phones during the class.